Today we go straight to the point without one of my wonderful introductions because, as I told you in the previous episode, today we pick up where we left last time and we carry on and close the subject. The subject that is about the applications that take place before and after the digital decoration process by means of digital printing machines. As we have already seen, in fact, the solvent-based nature of digital inks can fight with the different nature of all those water-based applications applied along the glazing line, causing many technical and aesthetic problems, and often, of course, forcing the producer to stop the production. And this is not very nice. The problem may arise at the interface between the ink and the previous applications of engobes, smaltobbio, and glaze, or at the interface between the ink and the following applications of glaze and grid suspensions. In all these situations, it's important to take preventive and proper action and, at the same time, to use the right chemicals able to avoid or at least reduce the problem. I am Davide Trentini, and this is Apparently Invisible: Chemistry in Ceramic. Before starting, let's make a brief summary of the previous episode like we were in a TV show. As you maybe know, we split the problems in two sections. On one side, we have the critical issues that may occur between digital inks and the applications that take place before the printing process. And on the other side, we have the problems that could arise between the inks and the subsequent applications along the glazing line. Speaking about the first category, among all complications, we identified three important scenarios, and we already talked about the first two. That is, the excessive or inappropriate drainage of the glaze and the uneven absorption of the inks on the raw support. Today, we are going to address the third of the three scenarios that may appear with the applications that come before the decoration process, speaking later about what happens after the printing process. So, the third scenario is all about the possible accumulation of water vapor in the form of condensations under the bars of the digital printing machines. What happened in this case? As we know, the tiles that, thanks to the conveyor belts, reach the printing machine are usually covered by a superficial layer of glaze that is marked by a high water amount. These tiles, and this is the second element that we must consider, have a temperature that normally range from 50 degrees to 60 degrees. This particular combo, water plus high temperature, can be a serious problem. In fact, the water vapor that is formed tends to accumulate on the metal parts of the printing bars until the formation of drops. And these drops, of course, may fall on the tile, causing a significant damage. What can we do to avoid this problem? We can say that we could take different actions, but three for sure are the most effective. First, when possible, of course, it is recommended to increase the temperature within the dryer to promote a complete or almost complete evaporation of the water content before the following digital printing process. However, it's important at the same time to avoid that raw tiles arrive under the print heads with a too high temperature. This, in fact, could overheat the printing bar, leading to many problems, such as, for example, a partial or a full obstruction of the nozzles, because, of course, of the thermal shock, we could say. Another problem that may occur in this case of a too high temperature is the evaporation of the solvent part of the ink during the discharging process. That is, of course, the liquid part within which are the colored powders. What does that mean? It means that the ink, during its fall from the nozzle to the surface of the raw tile, may partially lose its solvent part by evaporation. And even in this case, this evaporation process turns the water in vapor, which may be accumulated under the printing bars in the form of very tiny drops that obviously may fall on the tile. To be honest, however, we must say that all digital printers are provided with a locking mechanism that starts working in the event of an out of standard temperature of the tile. Another action that can be taken to avoid the accumulation of water vapor is to increase the density of the engobe or of the glaze by using a different kind of chemicals, so to drastically reduce the water amount during the application. I know it's quite obvious and maybe ridiculous, but the water reduction, of course, stands for a vapor reduction. Anyway, the target is to develop the proper conditions in terms of fluidization and rheological stability in order to work with higher density values without affecting the good leveling of the engobes or of the glazes. The categories of chemicals that can be involved in the process are many, and we are basically talking about dispersant, leveling agents, binders. But in any case, regardless of the choice, all these chemicals that can be added both during the milling process or along the glazing line must be tailor-made according to the different production parameters of each producer. The third and last option is the use of a primer that can be applied within the glaze but much more frequently on the glaze, that is able to significantly reduce the evaporation thanks to a chemical reaction towards the water, therefore preventing the vapor accumulation under the print heads. Let's now turn the page and change chapter by addressing the watery applications that take place after the digital printing process, that is, the application of grit or glaze suspensions. In all these cases, the most common problem is the incompatibility between the solvent-based inks that, in general, are made of non-polar polymers and the end-of-line watery applications that contain water that is polar solvent. What happens? The solvent parts of digital inks are real oil derivatives that develop a surface film on the decoration. And I repeat this word, oil. Then, the full fill application of the glaze, since it is based on water, produces real repellency phenomena between the suspension and the ink. And this phenomenon is very simple. Let's make a clear example to better explain the mechanism. What happens when you try to mix water and cooking oil, or when you pour water on a dirty plate? The two elements, water and oil, are chemically incompatible, and so they do not interact, remaining separate. In ceramic, the lack of interaction between inks and glazes leads to the same repellency phenomenon that, in general, turns into an improper leveling of the glaze on the raw ceramic support. But what is the mechanism behind the problem? Once again, we have already seen it in some other episodes of the podcast, because we must talk about the surface tension. Surface tension. The high surface tension of the watery system, that is glaze or with suspensions, must be reduced by using specific chemicals so that the glaze that is discharged on the raw type can fully wet the oily surface of the ink. We could say more precisely that the lowering of the surface tension at the interface between the oily surface of the tie and the aqueous surface of the glaze causes a greater compatibility and therefore a reduction of the repellent effect. Going back to the previous example, so we finish with the analogy, the pouring of water on the oily plate together with a small amount of detergent, that is the chemical that lowers the surface tension, results in a good wettability of the surface and so in its cleanability. Okay, we are almost at the end of the episode, but before we say goodbye, let's see two interesting last scenarios that, even if they are unusual, I think they deserve to be mentioned. Sometimes the ink applied on the raw ceramic support can be too much humid when the following watery application is ready to be discharged, whether glaze, glue, or with suspension. In these cases, the proper leveling of the watery application on the ink is very difficult unless you use particular and specific chemicals marked by a strong surfactant power. However, even if these chemicals surely improve the application process, they also can lead to side effects that must be carefully checked and managed. What kind of side effects are we talking about? We are basically referring to foaming phenomena within the system or to an excessive reduction of the surface tension of the water suspension that results, especially with glazes, in a reduction of the glaze cohesion. So, as you can imagine, we must be very careful because the balance is very delicate. In some other particular cases, due to specific aesthetic projects, repellency phenomena are required. It seems strange, but it's true. In this regard, there are on the market some chemicals, commonly named as carving, that can be applied by means of digital printheads and that are able to promote incompatibility between inks and glazes, limiting the repellency phenomena in specific areas of the ceramic surface. This effect, or result, is usually required for specific decorations such as, for example, the reproduction of wood or marble. After the firing cycle, the final outcome shows a lack of glaze over the ink that produces a natural depth effect. From a chemical point of view, all these chemicals are developed to be strongly non-polar, usually much more than inks, and their application must be preceded by many tests on the glaze and on the leveling agents that have been added to the glaze. And this is very important to promote a proper leveling, to avoid a general repellency phenomenon, and to keep the repellency exactly and only in the areas where the carving has been applied. With this last and particular scenario, even this second part has come to an end. As usual, I thank you for being with us, and I remind you once again that if you want to learn more about the subject, you can find all contacts on our website, which is ceramco.it, ceramco.it. I finally remind you that the previous episodes of the podcast are available not only on the main platforms, such as Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, but also on our app that you can download for free on Apple Store or Google Play. You can find it by typing that and as Ceramco, Ceramco. I hope I haven't caused with my exposition any repellency phenomena. If yes, I am very sorry, but don't worry, we have the products to solve the problem. See you soon.